Hi, Karma.
Kat, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Nice to meet you.
You too. Well, welcome to Passion Project, and congratulations on your new book, The 4% Fix, which is out today.
I have my copy.
I love yellow colors. Yellow colors scream to me.
Yeah. I know there was a lot of conversation about the color choice for the cover. You know, there were different versions, but the yellow just seemed like the right one. Sunny.
It's a very happy cover. Welcome to 2021 cover.
Yes.
Yeah. Congratulations on the new book. So it's out today. This is amazing. And so tell me, what is the 4% Fix and how can we apply it to our lives?
Well, that is probably a longer question than you'll want me to answer right now. But essentially, it's the idea that, you know, we're all so busy. Everyone is just overwhelmed by tasks and responsibilities. And this year in particular has been challenging for a lot of people. You know, some people find they have more time, but maybe not the motivation to do something with that because it's been a hard year. It's been a hard year to find focus and energy and motivation. So this book is really about this idea that you can find an hour for yourself in every day that's just for you to harness, to exploit, to maybe take on a project that you've always wanted to do but didn't think you'd have the time for. And really it's a you know, it's sort of like part how-to, part, you know, motivation. You can do this if you want, you know. It's not meant to be judgy. It's not meant to be like a time management manual with spreadsheets. And I don't do spreadsheets for anything. I'm anti-spreadsheet. So, you know, you won't find any of that in this book. It's really this idea that you should invest in yourself by investing in your time and protecting your time, so it doesn't get eaten up by all the responsibilities and all the other, you know, people in your life who need pieces of you and pieces of your time. So
I love that.
Dives into, you know, how 1 hour can change your life.
I love it. And I love that you're leaving it open to exploration. Like it's not 1 hour a day to do this, because I find like, well, I'll get into it shortly, but you've inspired me to make a lot of lifestyle changes in my life. But I'm still having a really hard time allocating any time for self-care. So that's where I'm going to go in 21. Like, even as I declared I was going to do 5 sun salutations every morning, just for me, I cannot get it done. I can't get it done.
I know. I understand. Like, I mean, I wrote this book. I use, like, the philosophies that started this book are deep inside me. I've been using them for years, and I still can't get it right. Every day. You know, there are lots of, like, I've been trying to meditate for a year, and I had a goal where I'd meditate for 5 minutes every morning, and I have a little meditation pillow, and it's quiet at 5 a.m. so I could meditate, but just, you know, I do it like once a week. It's just, it's hard sometimes to make those minutes, but you know, you can't give up on it. You have to just keep trying.
I love that. And I also love, either in the write-up about the book or in one of your posts, I think, actually, so you were not tying it to a specific time of day, which I thought was really cool, that it doesn't have to be wake up early or first thing in the morning, even for the night owls, you know, the people who really enjoy staying up late. So I love that you didn't, it can be any time of day.
And I will say, like, I mean, I'm a 5 a.m. Writers Club member, you know, card-carrying member of that group, have been for 11 years, and that's how I write my books. You know, there's a whole group of people. If you do hashtag 5 a.m. Writers Club on Twitter, on Instagram, you will find lots of people who are up early and writing, and it's this great community that has been really supportive. For me, that was the best time. It was not a natural thing, but I came to discover that time was the right time for me to find that hour for myself. And I do talk about that through the book, how I do believe that the morning is the right time for all sorts of reasons. Like probably the most important of which is that it's the only time where the rest of your life hasn't really kicked off. And this won't be true for everyone, but generally speaking, a lot of people, it's pretty quiet at 5 a.m. if you're willing to get up and watch the sunrise. But it's not that this can only work for people who are willing to set their alarm and be early birds. The idea is to find that hour. It's not as important when you find it, as long as you make it a habit and you dedicate that hour to yourself versus letting it get eaten up by other things. So
yeah. That's I agree. You inspired me about a couple of years ago from your post to start waking up at 5 a.m. I am desperate to get back to it. I don't know how I did it, but I did do it for one winter, and it was incredible. That's how I got my book done.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Just before the day gets going and people start interrupting, it was a sweet spot. And I was getting up at like 5:30 and 6, and it wasn't as effective as 5. Like that was really like enough time to zone out. So that was amazing. Now this is your first, dare I say it, self-help book.
Yeah,
you've written many best-selling novels, including Recipe for a Perfect Wife, and I've got them all here. Come Away With Me, The Choices We Make in This Moment, The Life Lucy Knew. This is your first nonfiction book?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And what compelled you to move in this direction for a change?
It sort of fell in my lap. And this is the thing. I mean, I have written 5 novels. I'm writing another one right now. I've written 2 novels before those 5 that never got published. So I guess I'm up to what now, 7.5 novels.
Yeah.
And none of that ever landed in my lap. It was all very much me putting in the time at 5 a.m. and working on my manuscript. And then, the heartbreaking part of trying to find an agent. And then when you find an agent, the even more heartbreaking part of trying to find an editor who wants to buy that book. So that's just what I was used to. And I think what a lot of people and writers are used to. But then HarperCollins had approached me and said that they knew that I got up early at 5 and this is how I've written my books. And did I want to write a book about getting up at 5 a.m.?
Yeah.
I called it the 5 a.m. book at the beginning. And I said, sure, because you don't say no when it's like another opportunity to write something I've not written before, to see if I could offer some insight for people who are looking for just another way to find an opportunity to do something they've always wanted to do. And so I said yes. And then I had to figure out how to do it, because you can't write a whole book about getting up at 5 a.m. It's short. You want to read more than maybe a paragraph about that, especially people who do not want to get up at 5 a.m. So it was a bit of a process, like figuring out, what is this book about and how can it be applicable to everyone, not just writers, not just people who are really goal oriented and like they love nothing more than January 1st where they get to write out their next year's goals. Like I fall into that category. I love setting goals, but I know not everyone's like that. So that's how this book came to be. Just a really different. The funniest thing about this book is that I couldn't write it at 5 a.m. So
that's interesting.
Isn't that funny? The 5 a.m. book that couldn't be written. I think it's because, when I get up at 5, and I do talk about this in the book, it's not time to work. It's not time to be productive. And so when I'm up and writing, I'm doing the very creative part of my job. I am just building worlds and characters, and I'm not ticking off a to-do list. This book was different because I was having to do a lot of research. I was interviewing people and then transcribing those interviews. I was mining my own life and experiences for what might be helpful. So the same, just sort of that creative flow. And I think, I think what I learned is that for me, 5 a.m. is about that just very creative flow time. So this is written outside of the 5 a.m. time, which is fine.
Yeah. And how did you feel? I started getting into personal development maybe about a couple of years ago, but before that it was like cringe, like self-help, I'm even like just the idea of that label, but it shouldn't have those connotations. Like who wouldn't want to help themselves? And why do we give it kind of this like bad name? Although I do feel like it's in the air. More people are, more platforms are motivational, inspirational. I feel like more people are into coaching and all of that. Is that something that you're personally drawn to?
Well, you were talking about sun salutations. So when I was a child, I have hippie parents, and my dad used to, at our cottage, wake us up early, take us down to the dock, and we would do sun salutations as an 8-year-old, which seems so sweet. But I just remember thinking, why? Why am I doing this? So I developed this sort of anti-hippie-ness, and I didn't even, like, yoga was not something I would ever do.
Yeah.
It fell in this wellness, my parents were really into that world, and I just wasn't. Yeah. But now, as I'm aging, I'm 40. How old am I? I'm 48. This is the age you start to forget how old you are. Yeah. And I have a child now, and I am learning how many things I don't know, how many things I don't understand, and it's just all of a sudden it's almost like, oh, okay, I need to dive into this a little bit, because sometimes I feel a little lost. And so I think self-help is, I know it's the term and the word that people use, and it goes on the back of the books and sits in the self-help section, but it is probably more of a, I don't know, wellness is so overused now too, but it is that idea of like, well, why not be curious about yourself, about your own life, about your surroundings, about what's possible, like that. For me, it all stems really from curiosity and just adding new experiences to my life so that I can see what sticks. I didn't ever want to be a writer. I mean, that was not, I know.
Crazy.
And
what did you want to be?
I wanted to be a news anchor.
Okay.
So I went to journalism school, and I was going to be like the Katie Couric of the North, and I was all set for this. And then life threw me a curveball, and I was diagnosed with cancer, and so I had to reframe my life. And at that point, I still didn't even think. I mean, I was an avid reader. I just never considered writing as a career. And so when after my treatment, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to write a book. I really want to see if I can do that. I had my journalism degree. I was not going to become Katie Couric. I changed, direction. And I just realized how much I loved writing fiction. I didn't publish my first book until I was 41. So,
really? Yeah. You've really been like pumping it out.
It's 5 a.m. It's getting up at 5, but it's a career in the second half of my life. And so if I hadn't been open to trying something different and to being curious about what might be possible and just exploring something, then I would have never known that it was something I loved and that I could do. So, it's no different with this idea of getting up or finding that hour and using it for yourself. It's like, be curious about, and I use curiosity more than passion.
I love that. I'm really getting into the curious thing. That's like a new world for me. Yeah.
Because it's less, passion is like a big word, and it has big expectations. And I feel like if you're curious about something, you can go down a rabbit hole and test it out and see how it feels. And if it doesn't fit you, then you just say, okay, great, I tried it, and now I'm going to try something else. A passion thing feels like, okay, you have to see it through. And if you don't, or you didn't like the experience, then somehow you failed, which is ridiculous, right? I mean, of course you didn't fail. But I have a dozen projects that I have started and abandoned happily abandoned. It's like the learning to say no thing. It's like, no, we're done. And so I'll move on to something else. So it's just, I think just being curious is like the most important thing you can do. And as I age, that feels even more important for me.
Yeah. And especially as an author.
Yeah.
And now, like, this is not something you can predict, really. I don't know. Well, maybe you, because you're so like diligent about it. But the timing of the novel, like when you were working on this book, there was no pandemic, right? I mean, when you were working on it, maybe, but not when you guys were formulating the idea.
No. Yeah.
And I just really love what you're talking about, like giving people hope and just putting positive energy, and we can still plan for things, because it can feel like today, like you can't plan, or what's the point? And that to me is like the worst. Like that's when that's give up time, right? So I just find it really incredible, the timing of this book coming out right now for everybody. I mean, they put it in your lap, and it wasn't something that you were thinking about ahead of time. But as the book was coming, like, what were you thinking when you were working on it and things were happening in the world?
I don't even know. Like, this book has been such an interesting experience for me, because it's almost like, I don't even know. It's so different from my fiction. It was a different experience writing it. It's been a different experience launching it into the world. I mean, we are in the pandemic still, but my last fiction book came out like just before the pandemic too. So I've spent the year, promoting it and talking about it through the pandemic. But there's something about, this book is personal, more personal for me than my fiction, obviously, because it's not fictional. And there's a lot of me inside this book. And just like through the pandemic and not having control, I'm a control freak. And so not having control over things is hard. But, this book, I feel like there have been all these little weird moments with this book where it's kind of just sent me little messages saying, it's okay. I've got this under control. Like, you just relax. You don't need to control the process. We're going to come out and we're going to do this, and we'll see what we can do and who we can help. But, my characters always talk to me in my fiction, which my husband is like, you shouldn't say that. Because it doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
I think, authors all understand that. I think if you write fiction, you understand that at some point your characters do step into your head as real people, and they tell you what they want, and you come on the page. And so this book, I think, has done that a little bit. Somewhat, or try, because it has been such a strange year, and hard for everyone, and hard to focus, and it's just like, what a year. So to have it come out at the end of the year for me, it's just like, okay, we're ready. Like, it's time for 2021. Let's see what that's going to bring.
Yeah. And I love the idea that it's like setting an intention for a time frame, because I think a lot of people did find themselves with a lot of time and were lost for it. You know what I mean? And some people it was great. Some people, they got to embrace things that they wanted to do. But like really setting more of an intention with the time that we're given in a day, and creating the space, and what do I want, and asking all those kinds of questions is so important.
Yeah, and just giving yourself that, it's like that knowledge that if you did this one thing for yourself, and then if you can do it first thing in the morning, then you have like given yourself this gift. I mean, I talk about like a cake in the book, and how if you take a cake and you divide it into 24 slices, and everybody wants cake because cake is delicious. And if you just don't serve yourself that piece of cake first, everybody else is going to eat that cake before you get a piece. And so that's my way of thinking about it, particularly first thing. I mean, maybe you take a slice and you set it aside for 11 p.m. when you're going to eat your slice of cake, but you've got to make sure it's tucked away so no one can find it.
Totally, especially when you have kids.
Oh yeah, or a sweet tooth husband. Like, you've got to hide that cake. But the idea is to serve yourself first, and to make sure that you are getting that hour of your day first.
Yeah.
Anybody else can access it from you or take it. Because time just goes, right? I mean. It disappears.
Yeah. And I think it goes in hand with what you said earlier, which I really get to work on. It's like, no, like when you say, this is what I'm doing for this hour, it's untouchable, then you maybe it gives you a little bit of strength or conviction when it comes to saying no, like this time is already allotted for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be every day. I mean, that's the other thing too. It's not like there are no hard and fast rules
Yeah.
with any of this. It's the idea is to try to make it into a habit for yourself, but that might look like one day a week, or it might look like 5 days one week and no days for the next 2 weeks, because everyone has a different system, you know, and I do know that it is a privilege to even be able to contemplate finding that hour. I know that there are lots of people, particularly this year, who for whom this would never even be possible right now. And that's okay. You know, it may not even be a full hour, and maybe it's 5 minutes to do your 5 sun salutations.
Yeah, exactly.
The point is more to just try to give yourself that little gift of focus and time with the same respect that you give it to everyone else in your life.
Yes. So important. So important. Yeah. Fill your cup first. Put the mask on first.
Yeah.
All of that. And now, so you've already got, you know, your 5 a.m. club that you're committed to. Do you have a new 4% fix, like some other hour that you're looking to allot for the new year as a personal?
Nope.
just the meditation every day. Hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, if I could only just get meditation going. That will be an ongoing challenge for me. So I might have to give myself some rewards, like chocolate chips or something at the end of my meditation, but I'll get there. My day is better. If I do that 5 minutes of meditation, my day is better. It is, it absolutely is true. And yet it's so hard to remember that in the morning, writing, or I'm like really into, or I'm busy with something else, like with my kids or something like that. So it's a work in progress. Like I'm a work in progress. We're all a work in progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember when I really started working harder at my book and making it a thing, I had a business coach at the time. She said, but what are you doing for fun? You know, and that's where the idea for the podcast came. It was just going to be something I did for fun as a release. And I was curious for you, that you're an author, that's obviously your passion. Do you have like a side passion project, something that you can do, like no expectation, just play?
Well, I like to call reading like a side. That's a side passion project for me, because it gives me a lot of energy and I love it. And it's the best way for me to relax, exercise. You know, I have I can't run anymore because I have a bad knee. So I've started rowing a lot. So I have this goal to row a half marathon early in the new year. So I like all these little things that it's like, okay, why don't I try that and see if I can do that? It gives me focus. It gives me purpose. So I mean, I guess people wouldn't think of that as fun, like rowing for 2 hours, but that's fun for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, like figuring out what you like and what really does motivate you and challenge you. For fun, no, I don't know. It's reading and watching like right now I'm watching a lot of Christmas movies while I was signing book plates earlier, and I was watching a really pretty cheesy Christmas movie, but fully into it. So
that's my favorite thing over the holidays too. Just movies. Yeah. Oh, well, Karma, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited for this book. I think the timing is incredible for it. And you've just been so inspiring and just so generous with, sharing the 5 a.m. club and your process and your journey for everything. And now you're kind of letting people in behind the scenes, and they can see how they can make their dreams come true, whatever that looks like. So
whatever that looks like. Yeah. With no pressure. You know, I always say, I do say that this at the beginning of the book. I say this to people who, the people who are most adamant that they will never get up at 5 a.m. are the ones that later I love when they send me notes and say, okay, I'm getting up at 5 a.m. now. But, it's like, you can try it or not. There's no, you don't have to fight me about why you'll never get up at 5 a.m. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You're grown up and you get to choose. But it is that opportunity to look for another way, to be curious, to try something new. Otherwise, what is the point? I mean, really, we're here, we're living life. Things are not as easy right now for a lot of people. So it can be hard to find something that gives you just a little boost. And
Yeah.
I think looking for, what makes you happy and what might help perhaps to lift a little bit of that kind of gray cloud that's sitting over top of everything, it's worth a try.
Yeah.
Else.
Yeah, an hour to be curious, to indulge, to take care of yourself. It's not a lot to ask.
It's not, and it's easy to do. It's simple and not easy to do. That's the truth. So
yeah. Thank you for sharing that and inspiring everybody to adopt that model. And
thanks for having me today. Nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone. This was Karma Brown, author of The 4% Fix, out today by HarperCollins. And see y'all soon.
Bye.